On today's show, from the waters to the skies, we'll hear the amazing survival story of Christy Wise. Plus, a former LU basketball player is making a difference in North Carolina schools.
Then we head down to South Florida to catch up with former Liberty football player Miles Hunter. This is Flame Central. Hey everyone, welcome to Flame Central. We are so glad that you have joined us today as we take a look back at Liberty alums who are making a difference in the lives of others.
There are countless stories of former Flames who are making a major impact in the lives of those around them. And today we were given the difficult task of narrowing that list down to just 3 people.
Yeah, we start with Liberty alum Dr. Eric Cunningham. Dr. Cunningham would deal with plenty of struggle and rejection before he found success and eventual reward.
He would earn opportunities through basketball, but he learned that there was much more to life than just sport. And today, he's passing that lesson to youth as the superintendent of Halifax County in North Carolina.
Get your 5 fingers up when you see Doc C. Get 'em up, get 'em up, get 'em up.
Dr. Eric Cunningham leads the Halifax County School District in eastern North Carolina. As superintendent, he's responsible for nearly a dozen schools navigating the challenges of COVID-19.
You know, the challenge that we're having is just rural connectivity.
It is.
Equipped with a positive attitude
This is fantastic.
and an inquiring mind,
How is it going this year?
Dr. Cunningham seems to be a natural for his leadership role within education. But it's quite a turnaround from the kid whose report card showed 4 F's and 2 D's his freshman year of high school.
But you know, the war, it changes you. You know, and my father suffered from things after he returned, which resulted in my parents going through a divorce. And in 6 months, I found myself in the projects. But I knew I wasn't gonna stay there. And I purposed it in my heart at that time that I was gonna claw my way out of here. Now, I'm the oldest at that time, and I remember distinctively my mother telling me, said, you're gonna have to grow up now.
Sports looked like the way out for Cunningham. But then he was cut from the basketball team his 10th grade year.
So I go home crying, Mom, what is going on? I need you to go up to that school. My mother looked at me that day. She said, I'm gonna tell you something, son. There are only 3 things I can promise you: food, clothing, and shelter. Everything else, you gotta get on your own. But you can do it if you work hard.
And he resolved to do just that. Cunningham would make the basketball team the next year and show promise on the court. But he also began to realize that his hard work had to reach beyond the hardwood.
I began to mature in high school because I knew that education was the key. I knew in high school I wasn't NBA quality. I knew it. I had bad knees. So I knew that my timeline of playing basketball had an ending date. So then I began to think about that education is the key. Education is my ticket.
But even though Cunningham was making progress in the classroom, low grades would limit his opportunities beyond high school.
And I ended up being Prop 48 because I could not score the SAT admissions. So I had to go to JUCO.
Cunningham would play 2 years at Richard Bland College before a new opportunity would arise.
Jeff Meyer came down to Petersburg and opened the door for me to go Division I.
Meyer was the head coach at Liberty University in Central Virginia. Cunningham would play his final 2 seasons at LU and earn his bachelor's degree, becoming the first in his family to graduate college. But he wouldn't stop there. He'd go on to obtain a master's degree at Liberty and a doctorate from the University of Virginia. But despite his efforts, getting to his dream job wouldn't be easy.
Now, my road to becoming a superintendent was after 18 strikeouts. I applied 18 times. But all it did was remind me to take one more step, incremental growth. So what, your number is 19. And when 19 came around, that was Halifax County. We are going for it all because we matter.
One constant in Dr. Cunningham's journey to becoming a superintendent was faith, the foundation of which took hold at a concert back in college.
I tell you, my faith was rooted at Liberty University. So when I rededicated myself at that Carmen concert, it began to solidify in me that I was okay just as I was. And I could believe and worship and incorporate my faith in every act that I do.
Striving to be a role model to the children he leads, many of whom are facing some of the same struggles he did.
I have never lost the feeling of rising and falling. I know what it feels like to be on one knee. I know what it feels like to be knocked down. I know what it feels like. So even though I am Dr. Cunningham, I never allowed myself to forget where I come from.
And for these students, education is the light that will lead the way.
We're a lighthouse district, and the lighthouse shines best in a storm. And when you look at the Halifax logo, you'll see this beautiful lighthouse with some big waves. The lighthouse represents the school, and it's anchored in the belief that education opens doors. I miss all of you so much, and I can't wait to reopen schools. I lead with my feelings, and when I walk in and I go get your 5 fingers up, and I say you have to strive. That's the same thing my mother said, go get it. And I'm passing that on to them. This is how we're closing the STEM literacy gap, right?
Filled with a heart of gratitude for how far he's come, and a determination to press on to the very end.
And just like in basketball, you leave it on the floor, and at the end of the day, that's exactly what I want them to say. He left it all on the floor. There's nothing left.
Just a tremendous story about perseverance. So many people in life would give up after being rejected that many times. You think about it, 18 times, but like you said, number 19 came through with him. Just a tremendous story of how he stuck with the Lord's calling on his life and then finally became the superintendent.
And what a remarkable role model for these young people, just looking up to him and seeing him get knocked down 18 times, but standing up 19. It's just really, really neat to see.
Yeah, definitely a tremendous testimony given by him. Coming up, the emotional story of Christy Wise and how she persevered through adversity.
Plus, Miles Hunter, see how Liberty football impacted his life and how he is using that change to impact others.
Times are changing. At Liberty, we've made it our priority to grow, to learn, to improve. But even with all the change, our purpose remains. We want to equip people to go make a difference through their calling in their communities around the world. And though we are blessed with an amazing campus, our most valuable resource has always been the people, our students, and those who inspire them. It's the people who serve, maintain, support. It's you.
But what's really important? Not the buildings, not the mountain, not the property, but the young people who use these buildings, who study in these facilities. They are important.
No matter what the future holds, we will stay focused on our goal. And the people of Liberty University are how we will continue to carry out our mission. They are the ones who empower us to
Training champions for Christ.
Champions for Christ.
Training champions for Christ.
A graduate degree is about more than letters behind your name. It's about mastering ideas, standing out from the crowd, not just for expertise, but for excellence and integrity. At Liberty University, we stand out from the crowd by not raising online tuition prices for the past 6 years and offering lower rates for select programs. Over 250 graduate degrees, one you, infinite possibilities. Teachers, your goal in the classroom is to help your students succeed. At Liberty University, it's ours too. That's why you can earn your Bachelor's of Education, Master's of Education, or Master's in Teaching without leaving home, for one of the lowest tuition rates in the nation. Study conveniently and affordably so you can help your students succeed. And together, we'll inspire excellence. From our classroom to yours.
Liberty University is more than my sponsor. It's my school, too. Fuel your education at Liberty University.
Today, we are taking a look back at Liberty alums who are making a difference. Christy Wise received a master's in theology from Liberty. A pilot in the Air Force today, Christy has continued to lean on sports throughout each chapter of her life, whether it's ski racing in college or dominating in warrior games for wounded soldiers. And the lessons she's learned from being an athlete helped get her back in the sky, along with some pretty strong faith in the Lord.
As soon as they lifted the blanket off my leg again and the surgeon saw it, I could tell by her face. I was like, it's gone. From the very beginning, it was never really sad that I lost my leg. It was more like rejoicing that I was still alive. As an amputee, I now have a lot of prosthetic legs, and I have named them all. So this is Xena, Warrior Princess. It's the one that I'm wearing right now. In a major life event like this, everyone copes differently. But for me, I've always been a busy person, and I've always just loved being a part of so many different things. Shredder. This is the ski leg. I actually grew up ski racing, so I didn't have any ambitions of being in the military, but I just wanted to continue playing sports in college. And so I got recruited for the Air Force Academy ski team. Once I was there, I thought it would be really cool to be a pilot. You just go over basically every single switch in the front of the plane, and you're making sure all the switches are in the correct position before you put power on the airplane. I always knew that I loved flying, but I don't think I realized how much until, there was a chance that I might do something else. So it was April 11th, 2015. It was starting to get dark, and that's when my friend Tim and I decided to go out on our paddle boards. And we had done that 100 times before. Because it was getting dark, we brought headlamps with us. And I looked up and I saw 3 lights coming right at me. So what I did is I was like, oh shoot, they don't see me. And so I took off my headlamp, it was in my hand, and I waved it at the boat that was coming at me. They weren't going one way or the other. And so that's when I jumped off my board to the left into the water. And I remember the sensation of my sweatshirt getting wet. The boat actually struck me in my shoulder. The first miracle that happened is I pushed off the bottom of the boat and I swam down. And so that, hands down, saved my life, because otherwise my entire body was gonna go through the propeller. But because I pushed off the bottom of the boat and swam down, then the propeller of the boat struck my right leg as I was swimming down.
The boat, which never stopped after hitting Christy, severed her femoral artery. She lost 65% of her blood in just 3 minutes.
The way my sister and I like to think about it, or what we've said before, is that the miracles started that night in the water, and then they just haven't stopped.
What helped save her life was a tourniquet made with her friend Tim's long-sleeve t-shirt, but they both knew they needed help, and they needed it fast. That's when they noticed a couple in a fishing boat nearby.
We both thought, hey, we need to signal that fishing boat. And then I reached down and my headlamp was still in my right hand, which to me is so cool because that to me is God. Like, there's no way I got hit by a boat and all this stuff happened and now I need to signal this fishing boat and my light's right in my hand.
By the time they got to the dock, an ambulance was waiting to transport Christy to the nearest trauma center, 45 minutes away in Pensacola, Florida.
That night, I honestly felt a little bit like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, because I could just feel that God was gonna use me in my story for good. But like that night, I didn't want it. And so that was like a really powerful moment. It's like, okay, we know that good is gonna come of this.
But good wouldn't come easy. Christy would face countless obstacles ahead, but she was driven to get back to her active lifestyle. And eventually, she hoped to be back in the sky.
A lot of people just didn't assume I'd be back to flying. And even in the rehab center, they'd find out I was a pilot. Oh, what did you fly? So I'd always correct people and say, well, I do fly C-130s.
Christy had a number of mentors, including other amputees who reached out to support her on this new journey. None more than Major Phil Varlick.
His wife and him sent me a card in the hospital. He's like, Christy, hope you're doing well. Also, you're overdue on your monthly boldface. Please fill this out and send it back to me. So it was like this pilot thing that every month we have to do this test. And so that was just like so huge to me that he was the only one that basically saying like, I know you're gonna get back. And so I like pinned his like boldface that he sent me in my room.
Over the next 8 months, Christy rehabbed, learning this new way of life. She had to go through 2 medical boards to get back in the Air Force, one to be retained as an officer, and then a second to be retained as a pilot. During these times, family and friends wanted updates on Christy, but her twin sister Jessica and coworker George, who were both by her side throughout the rehab process, couldn't keep up.
That's it, I'm making a blog so we can just update the blog once a day or twice a day. And so he thought he was being really clever and he named the blog One Leg Up on Life.
The response was overwhelming.
We realized like, wow, we have a platform. Like we have a lot of people that are really following our story and we should do something with it.
That's when the nonprofit One Leg Up on Life was born.
Hi everyone, Christy with One Leg Up on Life. Today is day 1 in the clinic.
Its mission to glorify God and help those in Haiti who can't afford desperately needed limbs live life to the fullest by providing prosthetics.
These just little tiny moments of like greatness, of like you see a little girl walk for her first time, or I'll teach another amputee how to run and see them smile. And that's when I'm just like, okay, God, it's all worth it.
A tragic experience turned into good. But there was still one thing Christy had left to accomplish.
I'm feeling awesome, excited, nervous. It'll be good.
Just more than a year after the accident, she flew.
109, Copaccio.
Her co-pilot on her first flight back, Major Varlick.
I think my whole life actually sort of led up to this, like being able to handle this. God uses all of us in different ways, and like this is just the way he is using me. And I think sometimes we wish he would give us more guidance in the future, but he doesn't. So that just forces us to trust him in each step of the way.
You know, Rhett, Christy has faced so much change in her life because of this strategy, and she still has one of the best attitudes out of anyone I've ever met, and always looking to help someone else.
Yeah, I love the story, too, of how she says miracles started as soon as I hit the water, just for her to look back on that. And it's very apparent that the Lord's hand was on her. As she said, as soon as she touched the water, it's one of those stories that gives you goosebumps about how God was with her every step of the way. And the fact that she didn't pass away through all that, losing that much blood, is truly incredible.
And still making such a difference on the One Leg Up on Life with providing those prosthetics in Haiti. All right, well, coming up, the story of former Liberty football player Miles Hunter.
See how the Lord used difficult experiences from Miles' life to prepare him for where he is today. Flame Central is coming right back.
At the fence, leaping! Wow! The 5 pylon, he's in.
God's calling for your life can be specific. And at Liberty, we're committed to equipping you to pursue that calling. Choose from more than 300 residential programs of study, or design your own major through interdisciplinary studies, and be confident your major is the perfect fit. No matter how specific your calling, you'll find a program of study to match at Liberty University, and become your best as a champion for Christ.
At Liberty University, making an impact for Christ doesn't wait until you graduate. Because here, we get out there and step into our community with our sleeves rolled up. So what does that look like? Every year, our students join together to serve those in need, whether close to home or far away, and share the hope of Christ. At Liberty, you'll find meaningful opportunities to make an impact with your gifts and talents, however God has called you.
And the only question is, how bad do you want that? Light them up!
It's well defended.
Not some selfish ambition, but for something bigger than yourself. That's the question. Right, diving grab, light them up! Juggling, catch, touchdown Liberty! 15 to the 10 to the 5, pylon, he's in! Let's go!
Get your tickets at lufootball.com.
Liberty football has much more of a tradition than just winning games, although they do plenty of that.
Yeah, the bigger purpose has been helping to develop men who will impact others for Christ when they leave this university, and Miles Hunter is a prime example.
Our identities are placed in the things that we do, and more specifically in the things that we're good at. I think God has given me such a cool and unique story to be able to relate to students in ways that I never thought possible.
From an early age, Miles Hunter had to deal with the pain of parents divorcing and fitting into a new family dynamic.
But many of you know my story. My parents are divorced. I now have 4 awesome parents. And so I spent from 4th grade to 6th grade in Pennsylvania with my mom, my stepdad, and then I gained 3 older stepbrothers and an older stepsister along with my sister, Sydney, already. So I was walking out of 5th grade into middle school, and it was the first time in my life that I had ever experienced just anger in a way that I didn't really know how to do or cope with. And so for football, it made me really good at the game just because all of that aggression was released. When I got out of football season, my 6th grade year, a lot of fights, a lot of just violent behavior kind of came as a result. And it was things that were happening internally that I didn't know how to process through as a 6th grader. And so it got to the point where at the end of my 6th grade year, I had gotten suspended from school.
Miles and his family knew that an audible needed to be called to get him off the path to destruction.
I moved with my dad after my 6th grade year. He had been extremely involved up until this point in my life. He had come up to every football game I ever had, but I needed him there. My dad stepped into a really vital role in that season of my life, and he was always about respect and always about manhood in the way of serve other people and make sure that you know that you have the name of Hunter on your back when you leave this house.
That accountability was important, but Miles' life was still missing an authentic faith. Even after attending Liberty University to play football, he continued to wrestle with God.
My redshirt junior year, I hit rock bottom. God was slowly but surely taking everything that I kind of put before him out of my life. And I'll never forget, after the spring game, it was my 21st birthday weekend. Spring game happened. I had played 2 plays in the spring game. It sucked. And my mom and my sister came back to the apartment with me, and I just remember going into the guest room closet, sitting in the closet, and weeping for hours.
Despite his struggles, fellow linebacker Zach Schreiber saw a leadership quality in Miles that even he didn't see. But before he could learn to help lead others, he would first have to give in to what God was doing in his life.
Sometimes guys don't see the leadership potential that they have until someone else brings it to their attention. We deal with real life. And so I said, Miles, a couple of guys who I respect on our team have raised some questions about what's going on with you spiritually. And I want to get it from you. He said, Coach, you're absolutely right. They're right. And so I said, Miles, Zach wants you to be his number 2 man. And I trust Zach. And I believe that God's going to use what Zach wants to do to transform your life. And so I said, if that's what you want to do, then we're going to have to get honest about what we need to get honest about. And I can tell you, from that day on, he never looked back.
The only time I've ever heard audibly the voice of the Lord, and it's true, he does speak in a very still, small voice.
Miles would graduate from LU and get married to his wife, Janae, and then they began to search for what was next.
One of our mentors, Jason Porter, he told us, hey, when you two get comfortable, God will call you away. And we're like, what the flip does that mean? And so we tried our best to get comfortable. We were serving in our local youth group, trying to figure out, Lord, what are you calling us to? What's our next move? And we ended our devotion, and it was this weird, Lord, what's happening? And he was like, I'm calling you to full-time ministry.
Miles would accept a position as the pastor of student ministries at TC3 Church in Stuart, Florida, using what he has learned through his journey to impact the lives of students.
Minister to 6th through 12th grade students, and that's in every capacity. And so we try to equip them with the tools to be able to defend their faith, love people, and then share the gospel in a very real and genuine way.
The road hasn't always been easy, but Miles now realizes that his journey has uniquely prepared him to minister to kids who may be on the same road he was on.
There's a process of the divorce, of being who I was, that God has made me new, that has given me just this freedom and this release to do what I can now do. And my heart still breaks for students that I see in situations like mine or worse. And that's simply because I can empathize with them in a way that most people can't. And so it's awesome. I'm super thankful for it. There's nothing about my story that I would change.
And so think about it as if you're a football player and, the jersey name is on the back and it's no longer Hunter, it's no longer O'Hara, it's no longer Brown, it's no longer O'Day, it is now Christ.
Such a great feature produced by our Donald Scott. And we were down there in South Florida. You can tell that Miles Hunter is really creating such a great community for that youth in South Florida.
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. Make sure you check out our podcast and our website as well, libertyflamecentral.com. She's Emily. I'm Rhett. We'll see you next time.